Right, in this video, we're going to look at the 6 basic motions of the lead wrist and how they affect club face. First, we'll kind of define what these motions are and really their relationship to the club face. So the first 2 motions are going to be a flexion and an extension. Now, we can say that simply as bowing the wrist and extending the wrist. Now, bowing the wrist has a tendency to de-loft the club, so it might give us a little bit of a lower flight, and also has a tendency to close the club face. And the opposite would be from extension standpoint is when we extend our wrist, it's going to open the club face, and it will also present us more loft. When we talk about the next plane, where we're looking at radial deviation or the cocking of the club, and then ulnar deviation, which is the uncocking or unhinging of the club, basically those 2 motions are only there to hinge up and hinge down or unhinge the golf club. Now, if we don't couple that with any rotation or changing of the lead wrist, that simple motion is just up and down. And then we have the rotation aspect of it, where the supination or palm up of the lead hand will actually close the club face. It's almost a rolling closed feeling, and then when we go palm down, pronation, opens the face, really good for our backswing. So when we look at these models, we really want to focus, and where I see a lot of players focus on that really help us is this extension flexion. A lot of slicers, people who struggle to draw the golf ball or really hit the ball with that solid compressed flight, typically stay in a lot of extension. Now, extension at the top, extension into the golf ball is going to produce a weak flight, a lot of height. There's one exception to this. Lee Westwood does come in with a slight bend or cupping in his lead wrist, and he hits it fairly well. So it's not, he is more the exception to the rule. Really what you see with a lot of good ball strikers is into impact, there's going to be varying degrees of this, but most will be either with a flat or bowed wrist, or will be working towards a flat and bowed wrist. Now, what that's going to do, push our hands a little bit more forward, increase the shaft lean a little bit, take some of the loft off. So a very good, solid, kind of maybe even a little bit lower flight, but really a very good compressed feel. Now, when we're looking through this, there's sort of 2 patterns that kind of emerge when you look at the majority of golfers. Now, one is maybe more for more the high elite athlete, where basically what they're going to do, and this is where you're going to start seeing a lot of John Rahm, Dustin Johnson, Colin Morikawa, where they're going to have a little bit more of a bowed wrist, and they're going to try to maintain that coming through. Now, again, we said bowed wrist closes the face and de-lofts it. Now, they all swing above average speed, so they have no problem with getting the ball up in the air. And their pattern actually is to hold on to that, and they actually, almost all of them hit a fade by how much they're able to rotate and actually clear their hips. Now, more of the pattern that you see average golfers, and still see a lot of it on the PGA Tour, is really a pattern where through the swing, you're actually trying to get your wrist a little bit more bowed. Now, it doesn't have to be, excessive. It doesn't have to push it right to the end range. But I think understanding how this wrist will actually move will actually help us square that club face a little bit more. So as we go up to the top, now even Fred Couples has his wrist fully extended. The only issue is the more fully extended, the more flex you're going to have it coming down. Again, anything is possible. But again, if you have a relatively flat left wrist at the top of the backswing, or lead wrist, when you're coming down, by maintaining that or bowing that slightly is going to help us to keep that club face maybe a little bit more closed, drive that shot down into the ground, get a nice compressed shot. It might be just a recipe you're looking for to hit better iron shots. We are fortunate that we have 2 hack motion systems that can actually detect every single degree of motion. So if this is something that you're really thinking that it could be really beneficial to you, book a session. We'll get you sort of some of your data and we'll work through that there. But just even as a simple, self-discovery, not knowing sort of how the wrists really affect the club face, sometimes can be just a nice, simple cue or reminder to help us knowing that we can influence our club face and ball flight by some wrist adjustments. So like our videos before, comment below and stay tuned for the next video.